Hello, this is the Steinway that's been sent to us to assess. It was in piano storage before. Apparently it's been in a music college and used as a practice piano, and the Casework's, for, as you can see, a bit the worse for wear, but strangely as well, I can't open the lid here, and I think that's because of the side piece here, which is moved sideways. The other side piece is not there at all, and the piano won't open either, and that's very strange. I can't open it, and I can't see any reason why it won't open, so hopefully you can get that open and assess it. Now I have managed to get the fall open by removing this, and it had to be forced open, and actually this also needs to come off for the front panel to be taken off. It's been very modified, this piano, and it's an X-player piano. Straight away you can see that because it's very, very wide, and it's been modified in extreme way, as we'll see in a minute. Very good ivory keys, so that's positive, and the piano we'll hear in a minute is surprisingly in tune for not having been tuned, I assume, for ages, because you can't get the top off here. So really don't know. This is very unusual indeed, and never seen anything like it. We've tried taking these off. The other side I've taken off to try and get the piano open, and we can't get the piano open. Using a crowbar we can see that it's not stuck anywhere except at the sides, but the sides are actually moulded on as well. If you look here, this is the whole of the side panel, and it's come kind of integrated in here, and we've taken these off. It hasn't made any difference, so it looks as though it's been modified, kind of the cabinet's been modified without much thought to be able to tune the piano. So it's going to be a very unusual assessment. Really would have to be totally redone. I think it's quite common for X-player pianos to be completely redone, because they're high quality pianos, Steinways, and their player pianos were often the top of the range. So it's worth doing, although it's expensive obviously to do. We did take off these brackets here, by the way, just to see if they were related to the top, but it's glued on, so they made no difference. And we also took off the brackets at the back, and again, no difference at all. It's completely stuck fast, and as I mentioned, it seems to be sort of like part of the moulded on, as it were. There's the name Steinway and Son, New York and Hamburg. I think it's an American one, just because of the square shape, and also because there are many more Steinway player pianos in the USA. This bottom panel won't come off as well without me damaging the case, so again that's going to be a problem. I have managed to look inside, and there doesn't seem to be anything particularly amiss. The pedals are quite high, but there's a lot of legroom. The casters are tall casters as you get on these. I like lowering them if possible, because although it needs very substantial casters because it's heavy, the pedals are 8 centimeters from the floor, which is a bit uncomfortable, but it's not too bad. And now, looking at the name-board, as we call it here, as a name-board felt, you can see clearly it's been moth-eaten, so that's a concern. So I'm going to look underneath the keys particularly. That's where the moths like to attack. Now fortunately the moths don't seem to have completely eaten these felts, as they often do. They love these felts, but you could see some moth droppings there, the green little round bits here, and I'm sure that's right across the whole of the front. The back rail is fortunately not too bad, so they don't seem to have destroyed it, and the action doesn't seem to have any moth in it at all. That hammer's a little bit farther forward because it's touching the wire there. That's something I can do right away to move. Actually the damper's also moved sideways a bit, so it's not damping properly, and we'll do that in a minute. You see the felt on the back of this key, that's related to the player mechanism, though the player mechanism's totally missing, and in fact the top lid, if we look at the top lid, they seem to have used some of the player mechanism for the top lid, so it's been totally modified. I can put my finger through there and touch the top of the piano, so really it's got to be redone, the whole case, I would suggest. That's the serial number that dates it to 1908. So not being able to remove this top panel without completely damaging it. I really don't know how they've managed to fit it in. It's not made to be taken off, so not made to be tuned basically, so it's going to be an unusual assessment, this. But this is remarkable testimony to the good quality Steinways, in that if you play that octave's obviously out and that unison's out, but generally speaking the unisons are remarkably in tune For I would imagine it's not been tuned for, well, it's 10 beats flat. If we look here, we can see that's supposed to be A440. That's about 430, 431. That's the A below it, 220, 215. So it's 10 beats flat here, 5 beats flat here, as you'd expect. So, and respectively flat, slightly less flat in the bass. So I have managed to test the tuning pins by putting the lever on sideways, and they're tight, as you'd expect, as the unisons are relatively in tune. And the hammerware, player piano hammerware, can be quite intense. If they're played a lot with the player mechanism, plays them quite strongly very often. But in actual fact, they have plenty of hammer left here, so that's not a problem. And generally the action felts are reasonable, the tapes are reasonable. That was been taken off and put back on, I would think. It's going to be very difficult and impossible to work on this really without modifying the whole action, sorry, the whole case, and then we can do some work on the action. It's actually surprisingly well regulated. If we look at this C, for instance, the let-off is quite late. Not as late as we'd like it to be, but not bad. And the dampers aren't lifting off enough. If we push the pedal down, they're not really clearing the strings enough. But normal things that you find on a piano, and Steinway's being obviously one of the best made pianos, is remarkably well engineered. Such a sonorous bass. This is a Yamaha U3 in comparison. So it's a rather unusual assessment of this Steinway upright Model K sort of style, and 1908, and it's sort of restyled player piano, that it's not completely restyled. Normally you'd also shorten the keys to make it like a normal piano. That's ideal, because then it becomes like a normal piano, and it has value. Doesn't really have much value as it is, unfortunately. And you can buy Steinway upright pianos for the same price that you would have to pay to completely restore this one, I think, or even less expensive. So we have a couple in stock at the moment. That's the key weighting, which is slightly heavy in the bass, so that's something we're used to having to put right. It's heavy here too, so it's generally on the heavy side, and needs treating for moth. So it's possible to do the work. If you want to do it to resell, it certainly wouldn't be worth doing. So that's an assessment of a Steinway upright piano, ex-player piano, and made in about 1909, with a very strange restyling. No thought given to be able to tune the piano or maintain it. So it really has to be restyled again, made into what, as much as possible, what a normal Steinway would look like. So it does mean narrowing the casework and therefore shortening the keys, but it's quite often done. Whether it's not economical in terms of doing it to resell the piano, but if you like the piano, and it has got the typically high quality tone of a Steinway of its type, very flat, but surprisingly the unisons are generally very out of tune. So being about 430 pitch, A430, I would imagine it's not been tuned for 30 years possibly. That's very low pitch, so if you're a tuner and like to comment on that, it'd be very useful to hear. Good quality ivory keys and a bit of moth. If you look at the nameboard felt, you can often tell, if you see little bits missing, that you've got moth in the piano, but fortunately it hasn't eaten underneath the keys as much as it normally would. These older Steinways are, of that period of time, up to possibly 1930s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 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 are just remarkable pianos. The only competing with it is the Bosendorfer 130, but that's very uncommon in the UK. So I say this is a very unusual assessment. If you'd like a piano assessed, if it's a high quality piano, we're really happy to do so and give you the assessment video. Please write to us at info@robertspianos.com. Thank you very much for listening.